Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a thrilling journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the enigmatic mysteries of the past, and the uncharted territories of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together, we'll unravel the intricate tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean. And you did a good job keeping it together there. I saw you almost broke into laughter
when I started fumbling a bit. Yeah, I'm proud of myself.
Heck yeah.
I would have definitely asked for a retake there, usually.
No, you kept
made
it
through.
You kept it together.
I was smiling, but I kept talking.
Yeah, I could hear the smile in your tone a little bit.
Yeah. We're getting better. So yeah, we're back for episode 13.
13.
We were so just enthralled with last week's episode that we wanted to do a part 2.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about some more of what we were already talking about, but
totally
go into the story a little bit more too.
Since then, I've listened to a lot more about it. I finished the book. I watched, finished Chris's episode on Danny Jones, and I watched the one with Ryan. Mm-hmm. And then I also watched...
Yeah, I just finished that one.
Yeah, I listened to both of Ryan's Regression episodes as well. Saw the History Channel documentary.
Yeah.
He had an interview. I watched part 3 of his interview with Richard Dolan, which is the part where he covers his first experience with the lady.
Yeah, I'm going to have to watch that. I didn't know he had an interview with Richard Dolan.
Yeah.
And he's a UFO researcher.
Yeah. Well, if you remember back from our UFO episode, the book we were quoting from.
That's right.
That was his book. Yeah.
That was the UFO or the national security state.
UFOs in the national security state. Yeah. That's like a 2-volume history of the entire UFO phenomenon as regards to,
He's like a journalist, right? Or like a writer?
Yeah, he's like a UFO researcher, writer, investigator, podcaster, radio host. Just,
all of the media covered there, really.
Totally, yeah. But I like his take. He's pretty level-headed. He's open-minded, but he's also skeptical in the right ways. So I dig his approach.
He prods where it needs to be prodded, and...
Yeah, like
he doesn't just take everything for face value.
You have to approach the topic with like healthy skepticism, but you can't just believe everything everyone says.
Right.
But
I mean, you could.
You could, and it would lead you in crazy circles and contradictions, right?
True.
But
as long as you can dig yourself out of it.
Yeah, so I like to keep stuff to a minimum level of scrutiny, but I like to stay open-minded. Like, I don't know everything about how the world works. There seems to be openings for
a lot of
phenomena,
philosophies of life too. So do we have any correspondence? I know we didn't look beforehand, but we have any correspondence?
Yeah, we did have one message on
Facebook, right?
No, I think it was Instagram.
Oh,
might have been Facebook, but it was just a guy who basically told us be careful like using the word. I think it was in response to our Einstein's intuition episode, and he's just like warning to like be careful how you use the word theory, because that means something specific in science. There's a difference between a hypothesis and a theory, and I think where some of the confusion comes is because there's the colloquial use of the word theory. Right. The colloquial use of theory is like just an idea about how something may have happened, right? It's just it's an idea. It's not necessarily fact, and it's not necessarily been studied. But then in the scientific view, that's what they call a hypothesis. That's just like an idea you throw out to test. And then a theory is more rigorous in science. A theory is something that is got more evidence backing it. It's past a certain level of scrutiny.
Right. Okay. I mean,
but still not 100% proved.
Was it just a random person that commented on it, or did we?
I didn't catch the name, but
Okay. I saw just the message of a buddy of yours that was like,
use his name. So
right. I didn't actually catch that message. I did see the message of one of your buddies, I believe, and he was like letting us know that he's done some ayahuasca investigations of his own, and he would love to talk to you about them.
I didn't see that one. You must have marked it red. Where was it?
Let me try to find it.
You said it on the podcast or like on our podcast messages somewhere?
No, it was on. I'm not going to say his name. It's right here. It says, Dean, I listened to your Amazon episode. Would love to talk to you more. I've had quite a few firsthand experiences with ayahuasca and would love to talk more with you about it, among many other things. Would be great to catch up sometime.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you the name later.
Okay.
But so, that was the only one I saw, and that was on Facebook Messenger. I didn't see anything from Instagram, though. That's weird.
Yeah, I probably marked that one as marked or as red so that you didn't see it. Anyway, we've prepared a few clips, and then outside of that, we kind of just want to have an open conversation about the topic and all the related issues that we think. So I've got a couple of the bits from the Danny Jones, Chris Bledsoe episode queued up. And I think they're pretty interesting and they can spark some conversation. So let's listen to this first one here.
Let's do it.
Oh no, wait, this is the one we'll save for later. Yeah, or actually, you know what? Let's get this out of the way. This is just fun.
All right.
He would ask a million questions and tell you one answer, right?
Real quick, pause it.
Yeah.
So this is him talking about Hal Povenmire and how he was kind of cryptid, and like you would ask him a bunch of questions and he wouldn't really give you much.
So this is
then he'd give you one
his
answer.
buddy Hal Povenmire, who
became friends with him over years of investigation. Basically,
yeah, he's a career NASA guy, super genius, multiple PhDs. He ended up at. He was basically been at NASA since the Werner von Braun.
Yeah,
days.
he was young. He was like a young.
And he was basically assigned by NASA to go check out Chris and disprove his story, and ended up not being able to, and became a really close family friend of theirs. But they had a bunch of conversations about the CIA and about like stuff that he knew, because apparently Hal Povenmire was a guy who. Part of the things he did at NASA was like before Apollo, he was the one who mapped the moon and picked the landing place, according to Chris Bledsoe here. So anyone who knows a lot about NASA, let me know if that's true.
Yeah, I would love to back, because I know Danny Jones looked into this guy, and I didn't do any of my own. I did search him. And you can't really find much on him as far as like all of his accolades and like history. Yeah. So I don't know if that adds to his credibility or if it takes away from it, but something to keep in mind.
All right. So this is from one of his conversations with Hal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Hal, why are they here? Why did they want me? Why are they around me like this all the time? He said, because of your family. That's what he told me. He said, they're probably your family. What that means, I don't know. And I'll tell you something else Hal told me. Serious.
So before you get into something else, what the heck? They're his family?
Yeah. He's like, they're probably your family. Like, it seems like he doesn't know, but from all of the information he's probably gathered from, because he doesn't seem in the way they describe him, like he doesn't seem like he's like thrown off by this, right? Like this is the first time he's heard stories like this.
And like that's another thing for like that is a sort of evidence of its own, even though it's super indirect. Like,
sure,
what the heck is NASA doing with all these people with all of these crazy beliefs? Like, why do some of the smartest people in the world who freaking help us land on the moon like believe in stuff like this? Yeah, they aren't the type of people to be thrown off by a BS story.
No, that's true. And that reminds me of another part in this interview where he talks to Tim Taylor, I believe his name is. And he's the he's kind of like the chief NASA like guy when it comes to like the launches and stuff, right?
Yeah, he like runs.
I don't know what his title would be. Mission Control, yeah. But he described Chris Bledsoe got to tour Mission Control at Cape Canaveral, and he talks about going into what Mission Control was, and it looked like a giant trailer like you would see on like a construction site. And he described when you walk in, you're walking into a central hallway where on one side you see what you would see in the movies or you see on a countdown to a NASA launch on one side.
The whole control room with
the whole control room with the monitors and people standing at them, even though maybe they weren't standing them at the time, but you could imagine them being there. But then on the other side of the hallway, and there's glass all the way down this hallway, on the other side it's Air Force people.
An exact duplicate,
an exact replica of what's going on the other side, but there's Air Force people. And they're not NASA people running Mission Control. They're doing something else.
Right.
But they have the exact same stations, whether they're hooked into the same monitors that are looking for the same things. That's different. That's up to, we don't know. But then he described there was an office at the end of the hallway where
there's an office like in the back
where Tim, being the lead guy, would go. After
said, like only he would go in there,
and it was after
like
the
a couple
launch.
Super crazy high level people,
and it was after the launch, and it made me think of like
he said basically that's also where he goes to like because they keep eyes on the rocket the entire way up, and it goes from like a ground view camera with a crazy lens to like an airplane to like a special crazy airplane that can fly super high altitude.
Right.
And they try and like keep it on video the entire time.
But they don't let everybody watch it.
Right. Well, there's a lot of like, some of those airplanes
they're not
and
all
stuff are classified in the satellite camera feeds and stuff. Right. So like that all goes into his office.
He watches all of those things.
Yeah.
And also there's that time, right? There's a time period when a space shuttle or whatever rocket is going through a point of the atmosphere where there's like no communication. It's like the magnetic field or something, right? Where it's like disrupting all communication.
Probably like one of the electrified layers up in the upper atmosphere or something.
Yeah, and it makes me think of like if that's around the time when he goes into this little bunker that he has in the office. I'll call it a bunker for dramatic effect, but this little office that he goes into, like maybe there's things being said or communications actually happening with the aircraft that they're experiencing something that he's only, and this is all speculation. This is me, wanting to speculate on this, but it's fascinating that they have a Mission Control, what you would see, and then on the other side, because you do see at the back of the room when there's Mission Control, a glass pane, a long glass pane behind it, but you don't see anything past that a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Like obviously SpaceX is different, but if NASA is doing a launch, I don't recall ever seeing anything past that. Like, because with SpaceX, they have their own private stuff going on. They have their own Mission Control. They have their own everything. Right. And we see a lot of what they're doing. But like, if you have the Air Force like simultaneously watching.
Well, because a lot of classified stuff happens on these as well. So
sure. So yeah, you would think that the Air Force
I think it makes sense that they have their own back channel communication. They have their back channel into controlling and reading instrumentation.
And a lot of the times the pilots...
There may be experiments on there that are classified, top secret military experiments that they need run in zero G.
Well, and like you were saying, those super high altitude airplanes that are like capturing the launches, those are probably highly secret.
Right.
They don't want any of that technology
that's Air
being
Force
leaked.
stuff, and
so
that's
that would be Air Force
classified.
Stuff. And also a lot of the time the pilots of these the space shuttles and the rockets nowadays are not nowadays, but for a long time are Air Force pilots.
Right.
So they are maybe have some sort of that might
which
have
makes
some
sense.
Sort of,
like the military branch who is in charge of the air is going to be involved with the branch that sends things through the air and then out into space. Like
I wonder how Space Force fits into this nowadays. Since we're going to be
that's
doing more
interesting.
NASA stuff.
Right, because
we're gonna
I
actually see
imagine
some
it
more
would
NASA
have,
launches
a lot
in
of
the future.
those duties would have fallen on the Air Force previously.
So maybe now Space Force is taking on that specifically.
Yeah.
Maybe. We don't know because they haven't done a launch since way before Space Force was created. NASA hasn't.
Oh.
Right? When was their last launch?
No, I think they do launches.
Do they do like outside the atmosphere or outside of?
Yeah, I mean,
They haven't gone to the moon, or they haven't gone to.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they haven't launched anything outside
like
of our.
since the space shuttle program, they've been.
They launched to like the International Space Station and stuff.
Right,
But then a
right.
lot of times they do like from Russia too. Like they've been using Russian rockets and stuff. So
I believe they lost. They stopped. The space shuttle was their delivery device for like manned space flight.
right.
And then when that ended, they didn't really have a way other than to like hire out from other countries.
Right.
And then that's where some of the private stuff came in. But
Right. Okay.
I know they still do launches, but they're not manned launches. Like they're like satellite automated launches, remote controlled.
Okay. Yeah. I just because we can continue here because he talks about the other thing he talked about. With
Yeah,
Hal.
yeah. So this is the other thing Hal told him, which I love.
Says all get out. Because Hal mapped the moon. He wrote the book on occultation grazing. I don't know how you say that word. Occultation grazing.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, he wrote many books on the moon.
Okay.
So he mapped the moon. He mapped the landing spot for the Apollo mission. He said, you got to land here. And he drew out the coordinates. That's what Hal did. He studied the moon more than anybody in the world. He's the expert on the moon. So we were talking one night out watching the stars, and I'm like, Hal, I said, is there really something on the backside of the moon? He looked at me and he said, there are buildings up there, big ones, and we didn't build them. And they're ancient.
Ancient.
Woo. So help me, that's what he told me. And I didn't ask any more questions.
I think
He
that really
wouldn't ask.
expands on what they look like too. If you let it go for a minute.
Yeah, he does. But
Yeah, we can talk about it. I think she mentions his daughter is also in this interview with him, Emily Bledsoe, and she mentions that to him that weren't some of these buildings look like mushrooms,
yes,
like shaped like mushrooms.
that was what they said.
and he kind of glazes over it, but he was like, yeah, you know, like ancient. Imagine ancient structures on the moon, not being built by us, shaped like some sort of primitive or some sort of like plant or fungus.
Or maybe
or
that's
mushroom.
just maybe it's like a watchtower or something.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And maybe that was their type of construction.
Dude, the moon is totally a spaceship. We're
It's
going to do an
something.
episode on this. It's I don't
weird,
actually
man.
believe that necessarily, but it could be. I'm just saying, like, there's some weird evidence about the moon, and we're going to give an episode to that.
So
But,
what he was struggling to
There's
say
been
there,
a lot of like rumors about like stuff on the dark side of the moon.
when there's also that idea of like all the craters have the same depth.
Right.
So
right.
there's like some sort of boundary.
Well, they don't all have the same depth. They have a maximum depth. Where like even if the crater gets wider and wider and wider, like the depth never goes past.
So
like,
even
a
if
certain depth.
the object,
But like
can-
small ones are
right,
always-
they're going to be less. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the biggest meteor or whatever that hits it is going to have the maximum depth. There's a maximum it's going to hit.
Right.
So the smaller ones might not reach that maximum, but
right.
the biggest ones are always going to hit that maximum. Yeah, which is interesting.
It is interesting.
And they've also
they say it rings like a bell.
says it rings like a bell. And they actually, when they were on the moon, when there was an unmanned lunar module on there, didn't they like shoot it back at the moon to like replicate that?
Yeah,
Isn't that
so
how they
that-
found out?
That's how they measured the ringing the first
Yeah.
time. Yeah, because they've had like seismographs on the moon for,
Yeah.
they'll leave that in their different lander gear so they can study moonquakes.
So there's a lot of weird And the fact that it has a tidal lock and it's always the face of it's always locked.
And it's the perfect size and distance to have perfect solar eclipses
Right.
only every so often.
Yep.
Yeah. It's nuts.
So I was going to clarify that word he was trying to say is a grazing lunar occultation.
Occultation. That's like to block or to hide.
So is a lunar occultation in which as an occulted star disappears and reappears intermittently on the edge of the moon. A team of many observers can combine grazes and reconstruct an accurate profile of the limb or lunar terrain based on the occultation.
Huh.
So they're using a simple graze path rarely passes over established observatories. Amateur astronomers use portable observing equipment and travel to sites along the shadow path limits. The goal is to report the UTC of each event, which is the universal time clock, right? UTC.
Mm-hmm.
Of each event as accurately as possible, and the GPS disciplined devices are frequently used as time base. 2 methods are used, visual and video. So yeah, it's basically like looking at the stars behind and like watching it go behind and in front of the edge of the moon to like map out the edge. Like you're using like super high magnifying
I see
to like see it.
Yeah.
So they mapped it based on
right.
Because what are you saying? Like he didn't necessarily map the dark side of the moon because you have to be looking at the face, like you have to be seeing the edges of it. But he mapped the terrain edges of the moon that you could see from a telescope by using the occultation,
by watching stars blip in and out behind the edge of it. That's
being
cool.
the light source to like get the edge and like yeah, it's interesting.
That's cool. That's got to take super
so long too.
Yeah. Like, how do you get that precise? That's some smart guy stuff for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I just want to clarify that.
Okay. Dang. Dude.
So he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
if he's an expert on the moon and doing this occultation process and whatever else he might be doing there.
Still takes UFOs and
seriously,
the
and he's
spiritual
going out
message from them and all that.
Yeah, and he takes that seriously enough to go and investigate this guy, Chris Bledsoe, in North Carolina. Like he takes his time, and he took his time for the rest of his life. Like,
dude, there's so many characters that come out of the woodwork. There's that John Alexander.
John Alexander is the Men of Stare Goats guy.
Yeah, he's Colonel
Men of Stare Goats.
John Alexander, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah. He's taken an interest in Chris Bledsoe, and
there's other CIA people.
He's like seen the UFOs, and a lot of these NASA people have and that's the thing. Like a lot of people, like you can hang out with Chris, and he will take you sky watching, and like a lot of times you will see the orbs. He can like sometimes summon them. He knows when they're coming. That's the thing that impresses a lot of people is that he'll be like, oh, they're here. And then they're there.
Right. Yeah. He'll be like, oh, they're here. And then he'll kind of like do this thing where he puts his arms up and he like kind of pinpoints it almost. Or is that more of his summoning technique when he kind of like puts his arms up? I've seen him do that.
That's like his kind of like praying to the sky. Yeah. And asking them to come.
And we'll play a couple clips. And I know we're going to put some in the previous episode we did, so you might have already seen some of these, but like it's interesting listening and watching him, the videos he puts out now since this 2012 event where
you have to go to his Instagram.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know if it's Chris Bledsoe or if it's UFO of God. We'll link it.
I'll link it, but let me pull it up.
But he's oftentimes you can hear him. He's got like a shaky voice. He's really like in tune with what's going on, and he's like thanking it profusely throughout the videos. Like he's he's like pointing out the orbs, and he's like, "Oh, thank you." You know, it's like he's receiving a message.
Yeah.
Like, "Hey, we're here. Thanks for calling out to us tonight. We'll show you. We'll let you see us." And it's like he's like, "Thank you. You know, thank you." Nobody else hears this. Nobody else hears what he might be hearing, but it really does seem like he's experiencing something outside of what is visually and audio perceptive for most people.
So his Instagram is Christopher Lentz Bledsoe. That's Lentz, his middle name. But I was able to find it by just searching Chris Bledsoe. So.
Yeah, it'll be easy to find.
Yeah.
And it's a picture
his
of
website
him
is
on
ufoofgod.com, but it's pretty simple. It's just a link to his book.
Yeah, but it's also, I think you can find it from here.
Yeah.
Or on UFO of God.
So there is no shortage of orbs posted.
And he's got the clip of Andy Bustamante, who's a former CIA spy.
Yeah. The guy who's
and he talks about how and he was the guy who was on the History Channel documentary of Beyond the Skinwalker Ranch that we're also have linked in the previous episode and probably have the video played because we haven't edited yet. So at this point, but yeah, no, he's not somebody who just because I've listened to Andy Bustamante on other podcasts talk about stuff.
You? Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I've listened to him, and he was super skeptical. He was 2 years ago. He was on Lex Friedman's podcast, and he was super skeptical of the whole UFO idea, and he thought it was just a mass hysteria type of thing. Like he thought it was, which, you know, he might not be wrong, but that doesn't mean it's not true or not happening, right? But now, since he did this UFO, History Channel documentary with him, the clip, maybe we'll just put that clip that's on there.
Yeah, I can play it.
In this episode. Yeah, let's listen to it.
All right.
Is that I saw things that I have never seen before. I had a chance to tell Sean about some of this, actually. I actually saw glowing orbs, like orbs of light, just round basketballs of light floating in the sky, floating at treetop level, floating at ground level. I'd never seen that before. And I don't know what they were. I ran them against a satellite tracker. I ran them against an FAA airline tracker. We ran them against actual maps to see if we were close to any kind of military base or any kind of civilian air base. And there's no explanation. None that we had. We saw them appear. We saw them change direction. We saw them stay in one direction. We saw them stop moving. Just amazing, amazing things. And that was just one of the things we saw. I watched a man wear an EKG.
Chris Bledsoe.
And I actually saw parts of his brain transform as he was having experiences that he believed were tied to some kind of paranormal or a pan-dimensional phenomenon. Like, I saw this stuff with my own eyes as part of this documentary effort.
I have Michio Kaku in here recently.
We can stop it there. So
that's dude. That's talking about the History Channel documentary, which I'll link, and you guys got to watch it. It's really good.
We're gonna put clips of it into episode.
Well, it's really
12,
good in a History Channel documentary kind of way. I can't stand History Channel.
If you watch the full documentary, just take it with a grain of salt.
All the fake drama of reality TV show.
They're trying to heighten all of the heighten it all.
Miss me with that. Just give me the info.
And have realistic conversations. Don't have this. And these are not actors.
Stage.
Andy Bustamante is not an actor. These other scientists that are on the show are not actors.
Right.
And
so
they're
you put them all.
They're
you put
giving
them all in a room, and you give them a script to pretend they're getting the mission to go out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like they didn't know that before.
Obviously,
they sat down
the
to
information is real because they got a real neuroscientist to go into the field with them to hook Chris Bledsoe up, and they have the neuroscientist standing next to Andy Bustamante, as well as this journalist. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. They're clearly doing something real. It's just that the documentary, it's just forcing this whole And
that
it's so
makes it hard
obvious.
for me to watch, but at the same time, the information's
The
good.
information's good, yeah.
So this actually made me more excited about it, like hearing him talk authentically about it.
Mm-hmm. Outside of
that's
the whole
so
thing,
much
yeah.
more convincing for me than the entire documentary I just watched.
Yeah. But maybe we'll link this. We'll find out what interview this was, and we'll link that too, because maybe there's some more information in there.
Yeah,
that
totally.
They don't put in this clip. And I'll watch it. I'm gonna watch it probably now too.
Sure. All right, cool. Well, we're over a little bit right now, so it's time for a little break, and
We'll get back into it.
yeah.
Talk about the lady.
Welcome back.
We are back. We are back. What's the
What was
name of
that? I didn't put it on the file this time. I forget what I called that one.
The lady.
I think it's Love is Far Stronger Than We. I think.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Whoa, we're about to talk about the lady too. That's her message.
That is actually.
I'm telling you, your music choices are
What the heck?
synchronized to what we're talking about. It's crazy.
All right. So I believe last time we played
Oh yeah.
we played the book's description of when he talks to the lady. The second
time, yeah, exactly.
And we had sort of like were
Fumbled around the first instance.
yeah, conflating the two times that she appeared to him.
Yeah, we were conflating the first instance of him meeting the entities that gave him the messages before he even met the lady about certain aspects of the world and like
Yeah, yeah.
and we were conflating that with his first instance with the lady. But we want to clear that up a bit.
Yeah, so
If we can.
What happens is his original sightings in 2007. Okay.
Yeah, the Cape Fear incident.
Cape Fear incident. And then essentially over the next number of years, it destroys his family,
his reputation,
his
and
reputation.
everything.
Everyone thinks he's crazy. Eventually,
arguably his reputation was going down before then, but
it was.
this like solidified the community's like disbelief in him, basically.
Right.
And then they continued to ridicule his family for the next 5 years because of this.
Right. And he had been getting the intention from them in his encounters that they wanted him to speak about this, which is why he had done as much as he had.
Yeah.
And signed up for the Discovery documentary
And
all
talked
that.
to the church about it and like wanted people to know about his experience.
Right. But it got to a point where he was like, no, I can't do it anymore. I refuse to talk about this anymore. It's just too bad on my family. And he just made up his mind. He's like, I'm through with you guys. Like, I'm done. And
Yeah, he had mentioned like he's like you're in the presence of my family constantly, and we see you on a daily basis. You're in our lives, but you won't let me share you with anybody.
Yeah.
Even his own parents, who lived on the same property as him, as soon as they stepped out the door, they vanished and they were gone. But then as soon as they went away again, they were right back in their faces.
Right.
And then he says, like, this is basically an experience of only 6 people that are able to see this, and it's his family, his 4 kids, and him and his wife.
And yeah, right. So then, after he decides this, he's like, it's like a night, it's like one of his kids' birthdays or something, or some sort of special event. So there's like 1 million kids staying over at his house.
Oh, it was the night before Easter.
Yeah.
It was the Saturday before Easter, and traditionally in their house, because it's a break for kids at school, they have kids
like
over. They have like a sleepover for all their
kids.
And I think it was mostly the boys because they were the older ones.
Right.
I think their daughter was the youngest, and she kind of just was there. And so another tidbit just to like help clarify what's going on. The reason he was alone in the bedroom is because there was boys staying over at the house. His wife stayed outside of the room to make sure that none of the boys were getting a little frisky.
Yeah, he made sure that none of them approached Emily's bedroom.
Exactly, because she was young, and boys can be weird. She was just playing protector, and that's why he was alone in the bedroom the night of this encounter.
No, I think he was sleeping in his office. He's got this office where he sleeps in sometimes because of his like.
Oh yeah, I don't know exactly where he was sleeping. But
his arthritis issues. He gets this rheumatoid arthritis, and the issues are really bad, and he has to get up. Or anyway, like he ends up sleeping out there a lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's where he was or not, but
I'm pretty sure that.
Were you gonna play a little bit of this or no?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's.
I'm not gonna play the entire thing on that.
Yeah.
That's Danny's content, but I'll play a snippet from when he actually sees the lady. But essentially, he wakes up and he sees these like shadow beings that they're getting used to seeing by now. He says,
"Yeah." He describes waking up to a thunderous voice. That's what shook him awake, because if it was his wife, it says rise, and this thunderous deep voice, and that's scary. If you imagine any dude like standing over you and yelling, like you're gonna wake up.
Yeah.
If you have a wife and you're used to sleeping next to your wife, if you hear her talking, you're not gonna like immediately like get scared. But to hear some guy saying rise, like that'll scare the shit out of you. So he gets up,
and it instructs him to like get dressed and go outside, and he does that, and then
the shadow figures kind of lead him towards the dog kennels again.
Right.
Where the initial at the house, the initial experience had happened.
And then this happens.
One of these beings stopped and turned and handed me this object.
Oh, yeah.
With 2 hands, just like this, handed it to me, and I reached out and I took it. It said, "This is yours, you must keep." So when I grabbed it, it felt like a hedgehog. It's prickly. It wasn't hurting, but it was prickly, and it felt like it was a living, like a dog, but it had no head or no legs. I could see it, but it scared me really bad the way it hit my hand. So I dropped it on the ground. This voice said, "No, you must keep that. This is yours, you must keep." So I reached down to pick it up. And when I did, when I stood up, they were gone. There was no more beings in front of me. And I thought, what am I going to do with this thing? And I'm juggling it, and I'm thinking quick. And so I opened the dog kennel, and I set it in the kennel and closed the door, thinking, you'll be safe there. I don't know what it is. This has all happened so quick. And the minute I closed that door, I stood up, and this blast of wind, it was so strong, this wind, it was a mighty wind, but it was localized. It wasn't the trees around me, it wasn't the forest, it was a blast of air in a circle in front of me that the tree, this oak tree in front of me, just disappeared into a black hole, and out of that hole came this wind. which pushed me backwards really quick. It was like so fast, it caught me off balance. And I fell all the way to my back, flat in the leaves. And as I'm falling, I could see what looked like a 1,500-pound bull, a cow, come out of that hole, ran right over top of me. And I could see through it. I could see the stars right up through it, but I could see this bull. And so I land on my back, and I roll to my stomach. And when I roll, and I'm trying to get up, right? I'm going to run. It happens within seconds. I hit my back, I roll to my stomach, I'm facing the other way. So I'm trying to get to my knees and to my feet to run, to know where this thing went. And immediately, the cow wasn't there. It was a woman, beautiful beyond measure. She was glowing, this bluish white color, and she had this white dress on that sparkled when it was flowing. Dress just moved, and it looked like an old Roman dress. It went all the way to her feet, and sleeves out to her hands here, and a collar. There's a painting of her right there. That was done.
You painted this?
No, the man standing to me is a famous artist.
Yeah, so that's the start of it. And
yeah, we're gonna link a picture of this. It was a painting done by a guy named Doug Ald. I can't remember where he's out of, but he became friends with Chris, and I believe Chris gave him a description of what he saw. And the painting that we'll show, and you'll probably see here.
yeah, we'll have it linked here.
Fascinating. It's a woman floating off the ground, which he later, what goes on to describe is she was about 3 feet off the ground. She was smaller than what a normal average human being would be.
Yeah.
But she was about 6 feet away from him, 3 feet off the ground. And the artist depicted a bull sitting behind her on the ground with horns, kind of facing towards us as well.
Yeah, and he puts a UFO over here too.
Oh, really?
Chris, yeah, if you see it on the original.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. So, and he even says it's not exact. Like, it's not exact. And this is the artist's rendition of what he was describing.
Right.
So it's just a cool thing, because I don't know how long after his encounter this was painted, but it's cool to have.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So the bull and the lady, which is where, like, later on, like, it gets associated with Hathor.
Yeah, because she's an Egyptian deity.
She identifies herself as that. But
yeah, she's an Egyptian deity. Hathor being the Egyptian deity with, commonly depicted either with a bull or bull horns. And we read the description of what Hathor was in the previous episode, but and her being the goddess of joy and love and all that.
It's just interesting because, like, as a lot of other of the investigators and interviewers and stuff point out, is that it's really not that dissimilar from, like, people witnessing, like, the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
And
or having some kind of religious instance or yeah.
So
that's true. And the way she's depicted in this photo literally looks like a woman version of Jesus. If I had to.
Interesting.
It really does to me. It's a long white gown down to her feet with, and down to her wrists on her arms. Depicted in a similar way you would see Jesus.
Yeah, that's
depicted.
Interesting. I think he talks about what she says to him here.
Yeah, he does.
Pretty crazy. That painting's big, but
Might have to skip a bit.
Yeah.
her face is different, but that's similar to what was in front of me. 3 foot.
3 foot.
And she said several things. And this is, I've been telling this for a long time about the times we're in now. We're in some pretty weird times, right? But she told me about that. and I put it out there in 2012. This happened Easter of 2012. She said, there's going to be trouble coming, and we're going to wake the people up, and we're going to let you do it. We're going to use you. We want to help you introduce us to the world. That's what she said. And she told me about an alignment. She said, there's going to be, she said, when the star of Regulus arises on the horizon in the gaze of the Sphinx, at that time there will be a shift in the knowledge of humanity. That's what she said. I didn't know what it meant. I had no clue if this star would align on
star of a Regulus.
So, yeah.
We talked about that a bit in the last episode too, yeah. So Regulus being the star of the constellation of Leo. Mm-hmm. Regulus being a system of stars, right?
It is, yeah. I think it's
and
like
the red star being the beating heart of the. Well, what I read is that the red star of Regulus is the beating heart of the constellation of Leo.
Interesting.
Not that, they don't talk about that specifically, but that's what they say in the little bit of, research that I did on it. And we were talking about earlier about like wanting to map. Wanting to like go and like find a sky map that we could like overlay with.
So apparently this codes to 2026.
Yeah, supposedly. I don't know where that came from, but I know
either.
It was said at some point in one of these. Maybe in the book.
No, I think Chris said it at some point, but he didn't like do the math. I think someone did the math for him or told him.
Oh, right. But we wanted to do that
I wanted
research
to do
on
the homework myself. Yeah, so I was trying to think if anyone knows like software I can do this with, let me know. But I was thinking if you go Google Earth and then you also pull up like
Sky Map.
Well, there's more precise like astronomy focused software more than
just where you could actually project a date, time.
Yeah, you can like set your longitude and latitude on the Earth, and then set a date and time, and then like click around and like look at the stars and their positions and stuff.
Oh yeah. We want a software that puts those two together though, where you can see.
Like, why can't I just get like the stars on Google Maps, and then set the date?
So you can actually look from behind the Sphinx and see what the gaze of the Sphinx would be at this time and date.
So I figure if I go to Google Earth and I go position myself right behind the Sphinx, looking up at the sky, and then take that longitude and latitude and that compass reading, and then I move it to the star software, put in the latitude and longitude, and orient it the same, and then set the dates. Like I should be able to like scroll through dates and see where the different stars are and look for if Regulus comes up in that position in that year, and if it does it multiple times. Like I don't know if that's something that happens every year. I don't know the alignments on that.
Did you look at all to see if Regulus even shows up on the sky maps?
Well, in this software you can just type any star name,
but it'll show up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
because it's the red star.
Well, I mean, they're going to be on top of each other.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Any stars that are like part of a system like that, like they appear as one star to us. Yeah, unless you zoom way in.
So I guess it wouldn't necessarily matter which of those stars was, because they'd all be appearing to be rising in the gaze of the Sphinx at that time.
Exactly.
And it's not like it's going to be some red ball that's going to like float above the. Yeah.
Right. But we did try and get ChatGPT to make the images.
Oh yeah, we tried so hard, dude. They would not, and maybe it's just because nobody's taking. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call out Brothers of the Serpent right now, because they come on, dude. Give me a picture from behind the Sphinx. They were just in Egypt recently, literally like within the last few weeks. Give me a picture from behind the Sphinx, looking at the gaze.
I think you can just. There's got to be a way to find. Like you haven't. Just Google searched images from behind the Sphinx? I know you tried to get GPT to create them, but did you Google it?
Let me look. I did not.
But yeah, the other thing that's really interesting about this particular event when he meets the lady is the weird spiky creature that he gets handed.
Yeah.
And
he's told later that it's a representation or a icon or of humanity.
Right, but was it real? Like, is it still, did it stay in his yard? He never said what came of it. He never said, like, oh, maybe this was just part of the vision, and then I went back there and it wasn't there. Like,
no, he did say that as soon as the beings left that initially gave it to him, or as soon as the lady left, it was gone. It was a symbol.
No, because it wasn't. Like, that's not how he tells the story in the book. Like, when the lady leaves, he takes the thing and he walks it into the dog kennel, and he finds an open thing and he leaves it in there.
No, that was after the initial people, like the initial beings, the shadow beings.
Oh, right.
Because they're the ones who gave it to him.
Right.
The lady didn't give it to him. The shadow beings who led him outside, because it was the thunderous voice that got him up. The shadow beings led him outside. Yeah. And then they said, "This is yours, keep it." And then as soon as he put it, as soon as he dropped it, they were like, "No, this is yours. You need to keep this." And then he picked it back up. And as soon as he looked back up, they were gone.
Right.
And then
that's when
he put it in the kennel.
Right.
He put it in the kennel to keep it safe. And
then he's walking out of it, and that's when he gets hit by the
blast of air. So he wasn't in it after the lady's gone. He said it was gone too. Because what she told him,
I never heard him say that, or you're just interpreting.
I'm interpreting. He never said that it was gone, but he never said that it was still there either.
Yeah, I've only ever heard him like say that he put it there and then never mention it again.
Yeah, no, he never specifically says it's gone and I can't see it. But I think that
Ryan talks about
and Emily both talked about it being a symbol, and that it's not something that's physically here in our space. It's something that was a symbol they gave him to represent the burden being put upon him.
Mm-hmm. So, but this is also why I like lean. This also like supports my idea of leaning towards this all being like astral, like he's out of his body,
right?
You know?
Yeah, we talked about that last time too. Yeah, about the second encounter with the lady.
Yeah, well, because that would make the whole thing like. Not a dream in the sense that it's like made up by his brain, but like in that sort of like wake, sleeping, like
the
astral
stage.
Right. So his body is outside, or his astral form is outside of his body, traveling around or whatever. And this is like a vision he's having. I don't think it's him physically being there.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But
I don't think so either.
Either way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't like make the story more or less credible, in my opinion. It might in some people's, but
well, I do remember. So in the regression, and I know we're going to go into a bit of the regression with the lady part 2 in a little bit. But in that regression, he doesn't. Well, in his original telling, he doesn't describe waking up and being pulled through the ceiling, but but before that happening. Getting dressed. But in the regression, he talks about later the interviewer, the person doing the regression, asks him how he got dressed, and it was like a automatic thing, like, and that's like a human thing, right? Like you're going into this uncomfortable situation and you don't want to be exposed.
Yeah.
So like that's like the brain. Like getting dressed thing and like putting on clothes, even though you were just wearing boxers to sleep. Like if it was like, it's like the brain's way of like comforting you.
Right.
Like if this was an astral projection, like that whole detail isn't significant unless you think of like it's the brain trying to protect itself.
Or it's just Chris not having experience with astral projection and being able to recognize it as that, and like
but that's
thinking he's just waking up and being knowing he needs to put his clothes on, and so he can do it. And because he's in an astral form, like his imagination will do whatever he tells it to, right? So like,
but again, that's
like in his head, he's like, well, if I'm going somewhere, I need to get dressed, and so he does it.
Again, that's what I was saying is like it's not a significant thing for him to do if it was physical necessarily. But astrally, it's his brain protecting him or doing something to like make him feel comfortable, right? So
I mean, it could be that.
That's what I'm saying. Is like it's a comfort mechanism, and it's not significant. And I'm not saying putting any importance on it, but I'm just saying like that whole aspect, because he does describe that in this one that we just talked about, like him getting up and getting dressed and like going out with the shadow beings. Like, why else would you even describe that?
Right.
Like, sure, he didn't specifically say I felt uncomfortable and I needed to like get comfortable, but like your brain will do that automatically without you even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. It's a subconscious way of the brain kind of protecting itself. Like when you're exposed, you're just wearing your boxers, you feel more exposed. So when you're going out in astral projection, you're like, oh, I need to get some clothes on. It's like a protection thing. Like I need to, like, that's just natural.
Yeah.
Like if you get out to go take the garbage.
I'm just saying, I think if he was like a conscious astral projector who knew that that's what he was doing, he may not even need to do that, you know?
Right. If he was conscious, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think that if he was physically being taken, they wouldn't care if he was naked. He wouldn't care if he was naked because he's being taken physically from his, like that wouldn't have been a thing. And I don't want to put too much importance on this or continue this conversation too much about him being partially naked.
This was in like the spring. I think it could have been pretty cold.
Yeah, it's North Carolina. You know, I'm just psychologically.
Yeah,
like it's not important, but it's interesting because if we're thinking about this astral projecting, it's more likely that you're gonna put emphasis on putting clothes on than if it was a physical thing happening to you. I feel like. Yeah. That's what I think.
I don't know.
Because you might not have even ever had that. I
usually try and make a point to put pants on before I go outside.
No, I hear you. But if you're being, like he said he was going into a trance, right? If you're being led into a trance, they're not going to care. If you're talking about these like beings, they're not going to care if you're half naked standing outside in the spring. Your body's not going to, your astral projection's not going to physically feel the cold. But his brain knew that, like, it's like a protection thing, and it's like almost like a layer that was put on top of it afterwards or during, just to like help him like cope with what was going on. Is all I'm saying.
Okay, yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
It could go either way for me. It doesn't that detail.
Yeah, I didn't mean to like make this a whole tangent, but that's all. It was an interesting point. Like, I feel like an astral projection is more likely to like bring that detail out than a physical manifestation of those things happening. That's all.
So then the interesting sequence of events after this.
Yes, let's continue, please.
Meeting the lady the first time is that he immediately decides to like follow her wishes and spread the word. And so he goes to his first public appearance at like a UFO conference that he has been to in 5 years.
Yeah, this is after months of after this. Like it was May, he said that the conference happened. So this happened in April. So it was about a month.
Yeah.
Roughly a month after that he was invited.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so he goes to this conference, and that's where Diana Pasulka sees him. Mm-hmm. As it's around this time, she's getting into all the UFO stuff. She, we'll get there later, but he at that conference, he's telling about the lady because that's what he's most interested in. But everyone there starts heckling him because they want to hear about the Cape Fear incident. That's what they know him for. And so he gets heckled a little bit. And then he like wakes up and basically something comes over him and it causes him to like spit out a couple prophecies basically.
Yeah. So like premonitions of future events.
And so one of them is he says that on...
Yeah.
Wait, don't I have the...
You do, yeah. The way he described like the instance of it is like, listen, you need to like hear this information and you know, there's this about to happen and we'll play it.
No, this is...
It's the
second meeting. It was the Richard Dolan one.
Yeah. I thought you had it queued up.
I did, and I think I closed it.
Oh.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're right at break anyway,
Yeah, let's cue it up
We'll
right
come back
after.
with that.
We'll cue it up with it.
Cool.
See you in a minute.
Adios. We're back.
Again. It's so funny, man.
We caught it hella quick, though.
That was hella quick. I'm glad I looked up. I'm used to looking at the cues now.
Yeah, we did
Dean hit play on the music and we're like, we're back. And we did the whole kind of intro thing. And then I looked up and I was like, I don't see our voices moving anymore.
I was like, because I hit play, not record. But
We're, so.
I got that video queued up. So.
Cool, yeah. We'll cue that up. I'm going to do a quick because I'm drinking. Dean is still not drinking.
No.
Which is good for you.
Yeah, down 15.
What?
Mm-hmm.
It was 5 or 7 last time I.
Was it? Yeah.
Damn. Doubled it.
Doubled it.
Tripled it? I don't know.
Keto works, man.
So I'm drinking Lagunitas, the Beast of Both Worlds. It's a bi-coastal IPA. So it's got the East Coast flavor with a West Coast clarity. So it's saying it's got the East Coast IPA kind of like
Are they
flavor.
Okay.
But it's got the West Coast hazy clarity is what it's saying. I think maybe I'm
so
mixing
they're doing
those up.
whatever the hazy process with an East Coast style beer.
Yeah. So I'll read this little description just because why not? What fresh freak of nature is this? Hazy flavor without the haze? West Coast hopping without the mega bitterness? Quite the contrary. Caju towering before you, double dry hopped with a juicy blend of Citra and Mosaic, yet finished with super smooth. This beast is truly the best of both worlds.
How is it?
It's good. No, I really like it because I love the hazy. Like I love the smoothness of hazy because I don't like the bitterness. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. I love like a nice.
I don't know. I don't hate it. I shouldn't say I hate it. I don't. I like.
You don't always want it.
I don't always want it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is 8% ABV. So this doesn't quite meet Dad's standards. Sorry, Dad. But I'm gonna go. Maybe Dad will join me. There's a local tap room that just opened up, and I'm gonna go there Saturday. Maybe you should come if you're available.
Yeah. What do they got going on Saturday?
So Saturday is they're doing it's beer and wine pairing with Girl Scout cookies.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think they just got a menu of Girl Scout cookies and beer and wine, and you basically, because the way
did we shout them out already for
we
anyone
yet,
local in Sacramento?
Yeah, we should.
It's in Roseville. It's a place called Keg and Cork.
Yeah,
and it's some family friends of ours who opened the place, and it's a cool
self-pour
tap room. Yeah,
and they have wines and other things as well. Do they have ciders?
Yeah, they do.
They have ciders. So they got beer, wine, ciders.
They got hard kombucha on a tap.
Really?
One time when I was there,
Rachel will love that. Too.
Yeah, they even had seltzers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
on tap.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, there was this blackberry seltzer that I couldn't stop drinking.
So yeah, we're gonna hit that up on Saturday. Me and the wife, and maybe Dad. I think Dad said he might join us.
Nice.
Our mom is watching the boys for us.
Heck yeah.
Much deserved date night.
So this is that clip we were building up. He goes out there, and this happens.
Conference. Boom. I wanted to talk.
Oh, no, this is the conference part, right?
Yeah.
That's what we were building up. Yeah, so he goes to the conference and he starts talking at the conference. He gets heckled.
Yeah, and he's talking to Richard Dolan on the Richard Dolan show.
Yeah, and this is like the prophecies, or at least the one of them that he gives.
About this experience that happened 2 weeks before. The lady, and the audience is like, we came to hear about the river event, right? And they started heckling me in the audience. And all of a sudden,
can't please anyone sometimes.
Right. So all of a sudden, words came out of my mouth for no reason. I don't even know how they did it. They said, you need to pay attention at this moment. September the 23rd of this year, there'll be an earthquake in Baja California that'll measure 7.8 on the Richter scale. And I gave the exact date, September the 23rd or the 26th. Never heard another thing until September. Now, this was in May, right, when this happened? May 11th, I think. Okay. September 23rd, I walk in the door, and on the TV, breaking news, 7.8 earthquake in the Baja California.
So we looked this up, and there was, in fact...
there was an earthquake.
In the Baja Peninsula on September 23rd. It was a 6.2. This was in 2012. Right. It was a 6.2. So this is years after when he's giving this interview, and it's kind of an informal style. So
yeah. So
I don't blame him for I don't know if he actually predicted the magnitude, because this says 6.2, and on the thing he's saying 7.8. So either he's misremembering, but either way, predicting where a earthquake strikes and what day. Even if you do get the magnitude wrong? Yeah,
the article we're reading is off of CNN's website.
And we'll link that.
We'll link it. And it says right here, a powerful 6.2 magnitude earthquake struck near Mexico's Baja Peninsula Tuesday. And this was Tuesday the 25th. So he said either the 23rd or the 26th. This is just a day before that date of the 26th. So... this is right in that time frame that he was talking about. And it's possible to... maybe it's not possible.
Well, there's a number of things that, either he's just misremembering in this one interview. Right. Because in the book, I think he's more specific about it. And I couldn't find the clip from the book. The book is a lot of audio to comb through for one little clip that you want to share.
Yeah, exactly.
But the
other point, it could either be him misremembering it, or it could be, just that the data for the magnitude was not quite and accurately depicted with the news, which is also possible.
Either way, this is within a couple days, even with his late memory, whether or not it was perfect, it was within a couple days of the actual earthquake there. So I mean, again, this is all post facto. I don't know, obviously the book publishing and Richard Dolan's show and all of this, we're hearing about it after the fact, but it would take someone who was there at that conference to attest that he actually made that prediction before it happened.
Because there's no audio of that, right? that
right.
we found
Well, it was
of
back
that
in
conference?
2012. I don't know.
He was speaking
it
through a
would've-
microphone. It's just whether they recorded it or not.
Right.
Or somebody has some kind of video of that specific.
A lot of
point
these
in
little
it, so.
conferences, they're not super well organized
Yeah.
in order to like record stuff.
And even if they were recorded,
Especially back
maybe it's just
then.
in some kind of like
Yeah.
file that some person has and
Yeah.
they haven't, put it out on the internet yet or something.
Yeah.
You know?
2012, like we were still new, like
Newish, yeah.
like there wasn't as many people doing
Yeah.
like social media and YouTube.
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't as
the
big to like record everything, and it wasn't as
Social
easy.
media wasn't really big until 2009. So that's
Diana
only 3
Pasulka
years
was there, so
removed from that.
whoever interviews her next could actually ask her if he did in fact give those predictions at that conference.
You know what? Maybe we should reach out to her and try to interview her ourselves.
That would be sick.
We should talk to her specifically about this, though. Maybe
Yeah,
this
I would like to know.
case and
I
like what
haven't-
she knows about
I
it.
don't
and
recall if she talks about Chris in American Cosmic, but
maybe we should go back or one of us should go back and read it because she
Yeah.
might make reference to some of it.
But I know that the other like chain of events that this sets off
Yeah.
is that after, so there's the prediction, and this is the first time Diana Pasulka is in the crowd, like watching him. She had gotten into all her UFO stuff on her own ways.
Mm-hmm.
She comes across Chris, or she gets in touch with MUFON. MUFON tells him to like check out this Chris talk.
Yep.
And she does that, and then she ends up getting a hold of him, and they meet, and she becomes like friends with him and involved in his story. And it's actually Chris that introduces Diana to Timothy Taylor, the NASA guy, who is the Tyler Durden character in her American Cosmic book.
So I guess in a way he is referenced, not specifically, but
Yeah, I think she does talk about.
She's gotta
Chris
have some
Bledsoe,
sort
yeah.
of-
I think so.
I've heard the
yeah.
name because I've read that book.
Yeah,
Or I've listened to the book, and I know that I've heard Bledsoe before we were introduced to all this.
yeah.
Like I've heard
I just hadn't
Chris
done the
Bledsoe
deep dive
multiple
on
times.
his story
Yeah.
previously, so whatever
Maybe
she
it
said
was
about
her
him at the
stuff.
time, I didn't have this to attach it
Fell on
to.
deaf ears.
But
Yeah.
anyway, like
But then
it's
there
pretty
was,
crazy.
there
Like
was
he
the
match
other-
made those two, which led to her book, and so like you can see how like his influence has indeed affected the nature and character of this like UFO topic resurgence that's happening right now. And so in a way, like even if you don't really believe his story, his testimony and his like character and his bringing of people together because of all of these agencies and like academics' interest in him, he put two people together that spawned a
might
whole
have
book.
never came together before. Yeah.
Right. And Diana's having her own ripple effects through the UFO
Yeah, and
community,
and her specific
making
take
it
on a lot of
okay
this
to associate the spiritual aspects
to
with
religion. Yeah, attributing religion to this. And also, recently I listened to a podcast. It was Danny Jones again with Jeff Cripple, and we talked about this off air a little bit. He's an ancient religion professor, similar to Diana Pasulka, where she studies religions all over the world. And he talks about on this like the UFO, the paranormal, and the esoteric stuff. And he talks about how like the main point that I'm getting from it, I'm only about 50 minutes into a 2-hour podcast, but he equates a lot of the trauma of a lot of these cases, these UFO cases,
right,
to being like the main factor of having the ability to
he sees
discern
trauma
these
as
things.
like the
catalyst for a lot of these
it's like
experiences.
the common denominator between experiencers,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Like there's usually some sort of trauma, near-death experience, or all sorts of different types of traumas can experience or can create
Manifest
this.
it. Yeah. And if
effect
you think
in people's lives.
And I can't remember how much we talked about it in the last podcast, but like how much trauma Chris Bledsoe
We
went
talked
through.
about it.
We talked about it a little bit in the beginning, right? We talked about how
he got shot in the back.
he struck
At 8 years old.
He got what else did he? You knew more about it from the book.
Yeah, he there was a construction site he was working on. And
That's right. He got
impaled himself. I think on some rebar or some framing or something. And he
held his first wife's body while she died after a car accident on the Dead Man's Curve near their home.
And there's multiple other like physical ones that brought him to like the brink of death as well. So
there was the over medication.
Oh right,
from his Crohn's disease that he was given by a doctor. The doctor died of it. Or psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And they overprescribed
his doctor
him.
told him that his Crohn's was getting worse, and if he didn't find a way to like deal with the stress in his life, he was just gonna die. And so he went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist put him on a bunch of shit, and that psychiatrist ended up dying because of the same over medication that he was getting. Right.
And a bunch of other people died also. Yeah, so he had a bunch of these near-death experiences that gave him his body so much trauma that like it's almost like if you think of like one person going through a near-death experiencing and having some sort of like level up or level down or however you want to look at it of like consciousness in order to like experience these things. Imagine 4 or 5 or 6 of those same near-death experiences happening to one person.
Right.
And then you get some sort of control over the fact that you have like this ability now to like discern what's going on like subconsciously or subliminally or
I wonder if what might be happening is that like there's the whole theory of DMT being produced in the pineal gland.
Right.
And getting like big injections like when we die.
Right.
And so there's like 2 theories of mind. One where our consciousness is created by the brain. In which case, you could try and explain away these types of experiences as like after firings in the brain,
chemical imbalances and stuff.
But then there's the theory that the brain is it's like a filter.
Oh, right.
For your, whatever you actually are.
The
like,
soul.
So if there is some sort of soul, then.
So the brain filters the information coming through to the soul, and the soul is what interprets it. But if the filter is too
like the
strong,
moral actor. Yeah.
So if the filter is too intact,
right,
then the soul only sees so much.
So as we grow up and we learn that, fantasy things aren't real and your dreams aren't real.
You're told over and over again.
You end up like losing that ability to access that, pineal gland. But imagine if you have some sort of trauma and it causes your brain to shoot out a bunch of DMT from your pineal, it might kickstart like the pineal to be more active in the first place, right? Like you just woke it up and now you're back alive and now your pineal is like ready to like give you DMT sometimes.
Yeah, dude. And me having young children, like I think about this all the time because imagination, just the innate imagination in human beings, like we all know it's real. We all know that some people, in their adult lives have more imagination than others, but as kids, you have a fully functioning imagination that is real to you. Your imagination can create the most amazing things as a child. And I am brought back to that a lot as a parent and watching my kids use their imaginations. My oldest son, he's 3, and like to him, like the games we play and the things he's coming up with are so real and so like visceral that like if I try to deviate it at all, it upsets him. Like, he's like, no, that's not real. That's not how this is working. Like, he gets mad and he gets upset when we change the rules of an imaginative game just because it's convenient for you as a parent, right? So like, you change the rules to make it so that you can sit on the couch a little bit longer during a game, you know, whatever it might be. Like, it's like upsetting to them because they're like, no, that's not how this works. Like, this is how it works. You got to play the game the way the game is. And like, he's imagining it. And like, it brings me back to like what that felt like as a child to like play those games. Like, they did feel real. I remember as a kid in our home, like going in our garage, which was always packed with crap, and our family knows, like our garage was always filled with stuff. And it could never fit cars. And I remember jumping around and like playing in the garage as a young child and like pretending I was Spider-Man, that I could like, and I was just climbing on boxes and a bunch of like loose stuff and mattresses and this and that. And I was like pretending I was swinging around the garage like like Spider-Man. Yeah. And I remember it feeling real. Yeah. And like, is that a way of like waking dreaming? Like, are you viscerally like having some kind of DMT spike in a sense where you're, whatever it might be, it might not be that, but like, you definitely feel, it feels real to you. Right. Like, you feel like you're the person in your imagination doing the things that you're doing, even though the person outside of you, the adult looking down at you, doesn't see it that way because you've been forced to, see the world a certain way, and your imagination is depleted at that point or whatever. Like, it brings it back being a parent and seeing your kids go through that, and like, you're like, I don't want to ruin the game, Right. All right, I'll get off the couch and I'll sit on the ground with you and I'll do the game the way you want to do it because you're having so much fun that it brings me joy, But like, in the moment, I'm thinking back to my own childhood. Like, it's real. Like, it's really happening in the moment. It's just not. It's not physically happening. Right. The way, and it makes you wonder, like, what could be possible if we were to lose that boundary, be raised to not think of those things as not put up those boundaries. Yeah, at least like take it seriously. Yeah, whether it's understanding that it's not physically here and just being able to understand that, and so that you can have some sort of more realistic or more understanding when it comes to like the imagination, like when your imagination takes over, and like understanding that it's real in a sense of like these things, the perceptions are coming in and they're being handled. It's just might not be a physical thing anymore. Yeah. Well, like the Hank Wesselman stuff, like I believe he describes it as like next to imagination, right? Like what you're doing when you're journeying is like you're using your imagination to like build something, and then you're like constructing something, and then some, like it can kind of, if you attune yourself right, that can bleed into like some other realm, right? Like, but it starts with you building something in your imagination. Yeah, you build a safe space, safe place, a safe spot. Yeah, and then that sort of connects to the greater spiritual world. Right, like you got to be able to build that within you, the structure of your humanity, the structure of your anatomy. Like your imagination is part of that. So you build that, and it gives you a gateway or some kind of launching point to be able to like further discover deeper. Right, because he talks about there being like multiple entrances and exits from your garden. Like, there's a way to like go up into the sky. There's a way like you find in your personal garden. There'll be a way to go down into the earth, right? And then you can also just like experience that level just outside of your garden. But then there's like a peripheral, right? So there's still like being grounded where you are, but then like being able to like, and this goes into like the whole like, that's like the mythology of the different like levels, different dimensions of the after. Yeah. And there's also a spirit realm that's here on earth as we are now, but like and if you access that, then you could go around the world as it is today.
Right.
and
Which is what
discover
like,
it.
which is
Discover
what the
aspects of it.
the remote viewers and stuff are doing.
That's what I was going to get to. Yeah.
Yeah.
The remote viewers are accessing that plane of existence, that plane of the spirit realm.
The remote viewers ran by Colonel John Alexander.
Men who stare at goats.
Dude.
It circles back right back into this Chris Bledsoe stuff.
Like, you think all this stuff is crazy until you realize how much money and like what type of people actually take this stuff seriously.
Mm-hmm.
When the CIA and NASA officials and top scientists and giant aerospace corporations and you know, like there's
absolutely, and to feed back a bit into like the secret history of the world stuff that we've been going over is like the people from history that fed into a lot of this stuff too. Like they experienced stuff in their time that can equate to our time's UFOs, and they did it through these esoteric mystery schools. You know, people like Charles Darwin and people like I'm blanking on some of the other people, but like some pretty prolific Isaac Newton and other people who are prolific in history that use their imagination. Use their imagination alongside of these like esoteric teachings to facilitate thought outside of them, like to like facilitate these groundbreaking thoughts that change the world. If imagination and some esoteric thought and some maybe a little bit of drugs can help facilitate the changing of a society, then it can still do that now. It's just we're being bombarded by this materialism over and over and over again, where materialism is king, and you know, and the non-physical aspects, the spiritual, all these other things are just secondary to it.
Yeah. There's another event where back to the Chris Bledsoe thing. Sorry, it just popped up. Is Diana is once she gets involved in his life too, there comes a point where she's trying to hook him up with she's trying to get him to take a meeting with some people, and he's not comfortable with it. And he's like, well, I don't have the right feeling about this, and like, unless I see a sign, I'm not going to. And she's like, and then she calls him the next day and asks him if she's seen a sign. He's like, no. And then she calls him the next day, and then the event is the day after this now. She's one day away, and she asks him if he's seen a sign. He says no, and he hangs up. And that is the night of the tree burning from inside. Right.
Yeah, the tree in their backyard burning, like starting. And we'll, you know, if you've watched the first episode on this, obviously you should probably start with part 1 of Chris Bledsoe's story and not part 2. So if you haven't, go back. But we're gonna have the video of it playing in the YouTube video, and we'll have it linked in the podcast as well.
And then when he's talking about this event in the Richard Dolan show, he goes into a little more detail in it. Apparently, what happened with the tree was they were all there for like the first time it caught on fire, and it had been 2 days since it had rained, so the ground is still
so it wasn't. Right, so it wasn't like
still
raining,
like waterlogged, but it's not like,
and the trees would be
raining.
Still pretty wet too, right?
Yeah, like not all the
roots would be and
gone
stuff.
Away. And but yeah, there was no storms, and yeah, it just catches, and then I guess it was on it's in like a bit of a distant part of their property, so they have to run this big long hose out there, and they put out the fire, and it really freaked his wife out, and she couldn't sleep. But Chris goes to sleep, but then around midnight, his wife had kept keeping a watch on the tree. Around midnight, it caught on fire again, and she runs out there and puts it out. And now she's like super spooked, and she still can't sleep. And then around 3 a.m., it lights on fire again. And she has to run out and put it out. Which, as an internal fire, like if you're putting it out with water, like if you're not reaching some pockets on the inside.
Sure,
like that could
retouch,
be
yeah.
right.
Yeah. Unless you're a firefighter and you know to just hold the hose on there for
just
hours.
the fact that you get that sort of internal fire. And so like in preparation for the podcast, Richard Dolan, like he like went and asked around like different people like to try and figure out if there was any sort of like natural explanation.
Right, in the area of like
he couldn't
some
come up
sort
with
of
anything.
thing.
But then Chris Bledsoe also gets samples of it to some of his like,
that's right,
his NASA and CIA people, and they get it tested at
some sort of lab, right?
MIT, I believe, and there's no like evidence of lightning strike or anything because there's certain things that get created in a lightning strike.
There was also cases, and I know I heard Ryan Bledsoe talk about this a bit, where they had like where orbs had appeared, there was like patches of grass that were no longer grass, and there was like perfect spheres of like
where the grass
would not grow
die,
for years until they tilled
the land there. Yeah.
Like where it would go for years, and him and his buddies would go and sit in the circle and look at stars.
He also
for years.
Chris on one of his appearances talked about
and it was irradiated. Like I remember they were testing the soil before they would till it.
Yeah, it was irradiated. Later on, he meets Blink-182 guy.
Oh yeah, shit. I would have known it before you snapped and pointed at me, but now I'm on the spot.
With the Two Stars Academy.
Yeah.
Him and Lou Elizondo end up meeting Chris Bledsoe as well. And Chris gives them some material that he has found, because apparently these orbs, they're like, can like drop. Tom DeLonge, right. They can like have like droppings and stuff, like liquid stuff that like drops off of it. And so he had some material and he gave that to them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And they went to test it, and then they said they couldn't give it back to him. Yeah.
Because they took the material and then went and tested, and they just wouldn't give back to him.
Yeah, they said they couldn't.
Afterwards,
it's classified now.
And also that goes back to also
a dick move.
Yeah, that's a total dick move. And I'm not a huge fan of the To the Stars Academy. I'm not a huge fan of it, at least.
Yeah.
Because they do talk about it a little bit with this story, but like there is parts of this UFO phenomena, this esoteric, this high strangeness that is not friendly, that is not looking for the goodness in people, and it's not trying to promote the goodness of people, and trying to promote the goodness of humanity.
Yeah.
There is an underbelly of this that
wants
more fear of it.
The aliens, and they want you to think they're aliens from another planet.
Yeah,
and they want you to have fear. Over. Like a lot of the military people, like their concern is that like we have no control over our skies with them around, and it puts us in danger. And
it's national security, and like it's important to keep it locked up and secure. And like, you know, this is kind of where the To the Stars Academy kind of points, though, because they've got like the what's his name, the ex-military guy that's a part of their group, or at least was Lou Elizondo. He also promotes that kind of point of view as well, is that they're like, this is a national security thing, and like anything that's like it is factually
true that if your job is part of national security,
of course,
you need to understand what's flying through your skies.
But that's a human point of view, in a sense of like not understanding that they're like not being open-minded to the fact that we are not the end-all be-all of entities in the universe.
Right.
That's thinking we are the pinnacle, and that anything else is malevolent. Right? So if you're outside of outside of Earth, you're malevolent. But the thing is like history says the opposite. So if these things are out there and we haven't been invaded or attacked thus far, what's to say that they aren't benevolent?
Yeah,
Why do they have to be malevolent?
Yeah, well, or is it like everything in life and it's more complicated and there's both?
Yeah, I mean,
You
that's
know?
true too, yeah.
So,
That's true too. But I guess the thing is I guess the idea
but
that
it's
I'm
the
trying
general
to-
message is like
the general message
some
is
people can
to-
try and get you to think about the UFO topic on that side
Yeah.
and to the exclusion of this
Exactly.
side of open-minded
Exactly.
spiritual,
Exactly.
you know,
But
like the
where-
love side of it.
The thing is that I don't want to give full credit to Chris Bledsoe in this aspect, but he talks about both. Like he admits that there is a different side
Yeah.
to this whole encountering of these entities.
Well, and that's part of the message from the lady.
from the lady,
So
yeah.
Let's take a quick break here and then
Yeah, we'll
let's
finish
talk
it
about
up.
that. Yeah, and
we'll
I want to
finish
talk
up
about I've also got a clip of the first or the second regression where he talks about the lady. We didn't play that yet, did we?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So anyway,
We'll be back. Stay tuned. That song, that specifically always wants me to get my arms moving. All right,
that
we're
one's
back.
called "If I Called Your Name,"
If I called you.
or we shortened it to "If I."
That's right, yeah.
So, yeah, had some baby attention to give this time. Is he settled back down?
Yeah, kind of. He's calm. He's just sitting up right now,
Gotcha.
looking around, coughing.
Just waiting till he wants to lay down again.
Hopefully, yeah.
So I've got another piece queued up. So this is from the Bledsoe Said So podcast, which is Ryan Bledsoe's podcast.
His buddy, yeah.
So this is from the second regression.
Yes.
We played a bunch of clips in last week from the first regression, where it was a regression of the river event.
Right. And the
This-
second regression is the second
Encounter
with the lady. Yeah.
Right.
This was in 2012. also, right?
It was not that long after the first one, I believe, but I don't know the date on it. I think he covers it in this podcast, though. I just don't have that date on the top of my head.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play from the moment where right before we get like the message from the lady, and we can talk on some of these topics.
Okay.
And Chris, what about her face? What can you see about her face? Chris, she's the most beautiful. She's love. She looks totally human. She's very young looking, 30s. She doesn't look very old. Youthful and beautiful in this glowing, beautiful light. But she looks very sad. The most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And her love, she radiates. My body's vibrating from the energy that she's emitting. This light is going through my body and causing me to tremble. I'm not afraid. It's her presence. Oh God, she's talking to me. Barbara, be really aware of what she's saying. Chris, oh Lord, she's telling me that she brought me back to put secrets there, secrets that I would not know until the time is ready. She's telling me things that I have to stay my course, that I can never waver. Her and her angels will never let me out of their sight ever, and that they're guiding me, and I have to trust what I know. I have to trust, and she's telling me that she'll place people within my path that were meant to be, that she's guiding them as well, and that we will come together at the right time, and that all will be revealed in my lifetime, or at least my family's lifetime. Barbara, do you know what this means when she says to stay the course? Chris, I know what she means. She's told me before. I doubted these beings that healed me, that she sent them for me because of suffering and because of the plan that was created ahead of time. He begins crying here, ahead of time, and that they'd always been with me from the beginning and before. And that this time that this time that we're living in is the time that was written about in the book of Revelations in the Bible and in the ancient texts. The age is about to change. It's the end of time. It's the age of Pisces. And the beginning is the new age and a shift in the powers. Every new age will bring in peace and the love of the mother and the divine feminine. And then it says specifically, he begins crying and trembling. There are people that don't want this out and that will push back, but I have to stay the course. Never, never waver from what I know. And she will guide me, and she will place the right people to help and to protect, because a new beginning is coming. It's so beautiful. Barbara, so this is very important for you, Chris, to get this contact with her and get this reassurance. This is encouragement, Chris. And then it says, cries here very much. Chris, yes, I've been so afraid. These people, I've had a lot of people try to convince me that what I've experienced is something different, and I've been threatened, and she told me back then that I would be, but to stay the course and not waver, never, because the truth will come. The truth will come, but much trouble will come ahead. And then it says, there's a lot of darkness that doesn't want the truth. The divine feminine will bring about peace and love in this new world, in this new age that's coming. It's coming, and there's nothing to stop it. It's coming. Barbara, and are you part of this change when she says you must stay the course? Are you part of what will bring about the change? Chris, yes. This message that my experience is from love. It's not from fear. But love has its own, and fear has its own. And that we should love one another because things are getting out of hand and the world is in chaos. And fear is setting in, and fear will overcome us all, and the darkness will win.
When you understand, let me just cut in. When you understand.
Yeah, that goes right back to what we were talking about, like these separate,
the factions
of this whole thing, and and whether it's a faction or if it's just human nature to give in to the fear too, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because even with Chris himself, during these experiences, he admitted to, and Chris Jr., they felt so much fear in experiencing what he's experiencing.
Yeah.
That is it's an innate thing that seems to come from the human experience, is anything you do not understand is met by fear initially.
Right,
Always.
right.
It will always be met by fear because like
It's part of the survival mechanism.
Yeah. And then going back to the
It serves
secret
us to be afraid of things we don't understand so that we don't get
for
ourselves
survival
killed in stupid
purposes,
ways.
right? Yeah. But like it goes back to this idea of like the secret history of the world, right? So like this idea of like once we become material to the point of like fearing for our survival and trying to continue our own existence, like fear is the thing that keeps us alive. It's the fear of the cliffs, it's the fear of the animals, it's the fear of this that kept us alive for so long that it's hard to go against that.
Yeah, and I don't think her message is to go against it 100%, but
No,
you can't like live and dwell in fear and like be ruled by it.
Well, and you can tell that the way she interacts with him, right? Rushing him as an entity of a bowl through a black hole portal in his yard, and like if this is all true and real, like those are things that would make anybody fearful.
Yeah, that's scary, man.
Scary shit, you know, and like she, you know,
Unless
fear
you've
is
already
not-
been initiated, and even then,
Right.
it still could be.
Still, yeah. So like it's obvious that fear and like with this idea of trauma is innately accompanied with fear, right? You fear trauma in your life, right? Like unless it's happening already or it's happened, like, and you've learned the lessons that it has or whatever, and you survived it, you're innately going to fear the idea of being traumatized, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. But in the aspect of like the UFO, it's like of like the world we're living in and the place we're in the world, you know, like I even if like any of this isn't like true, if his experience isn't, like the message kind of is, you know, like we are in a crazy point in the world where
fear has kind of taken over, and
you know, there's different people are starting to split. There's people who are like using this technological freedom to like determine their own like diet of like information and news.
Ingestion,
and then there's people who just plug into like the corporate mainstream outlets that they've been handed.
Right.
And if you turn on the news, like what is it? It's just fear porn.
It's fear mongering. Yeah.
It's just like every single story is about, you know, the wars or it's just all these terrible things.
All the terrible things that happen.
It's there to get your stress levels
society.
up and make you freak out about the world and the
make
state
you
it's
comment
in.
and reply and
Make you see others around you as your enemy who aren't your enemy.
Yep.
But that's that fear, you know, like we have to get out of that fear. And we specifically, with the topic of these encounters, we can't like approach it from like a fear mentality wholly. Like if there is a dark side to this, if there is an underbelly to it that is worth some fear, like you have to be careful not to like apply that fear to everything and miss the good, you know?
Well, and also it's imperative to understand that like if there is a fear aspect to this newfound like discovery that as a human society we're going to, you know, come upon, fear is inevitable because it's unknown. But battling through the fear and understanding that fear is just the absence of knowledge on a certain topic, right?
Yeah.
And like being brave through the fact that we know that, like understanding that as a like a human species, like we can get through it, and we've gotten through other fearful things in our past to allow us to be here at this moment. We've had to brave so many other fearful things in order to transcend to where we are now. Like, just to remember that, and to remember that it was when people come together and see the similarities that we all have as a humanity, that you get through those dark times.
Yeah. I especially found the part interesting where she said that this is like the time of the book of Revelations was writing about.
Right.
Which is interesting. I've never been a huge Bible reader. I've read a little bit, but it would be interesting to go over. I know people talk about Revelations all the time and all the crazy stuff in it. It sounds like essentially like a hallucinogenic fever dream prophecy that's like coded language, you know?
Right. Yeah, a lot of this ancient esoteric wisdom is disguised in a lot of this like coded messaging. Like, it's like it's a story. It's not a word for word of what is to come, but it's a coded message that we can decipher.
Yeah.
If you look past the facade of it all. But I would love to. I haven't read Revelations, word for word, but I've heard this and that about it. Definitely seems pretty trippy.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposedly like the end times or like the second coming and all that, which, there was another thing. I think this was in one of, like, going through, and you guys should listen to Ryan's 2 regression episodes and just check out his podcast.
It's a great name. Bledsoe said so.
I don't think Drew enjoys his like pontificating as much as I do, but I find him enjoyable because he's kind of nerded out. So he got a degree in psychology, and he's been really into reading a bunch of esoteric stuff. And so, being Chris Bledsoe's son, having had all those experiences, and also being into those topics, he makes some interesting associations, I think.
Yeah, I would say, just to clarify, is like I don't necessarily. It's mostly on these specific episodes that I have a problem with it.
Oh, because he keeps cutting in. Because he cuts in and
he wants to talk about a lot of his personal like beliefs and stuff, and I understand that. And I do have listened to some of his personal, like when they aren't talking about this story specifically.
Yeah.
Like I get that, but it's just the specific like chiming in constantly when it comes to like this story. Like I get it. You do understand a lot of the stuff outside of what this story has to do or what your dad understands, but like just let the story, like let's let the regression play out a bit is the only issue I have.
I mean, he's trying to give context, but
no, I get it. I think the personal stuff is great. Like I think when he talks about like his personal, but like it's when he's like, this is what I think is what they mean by this. It's like, I'm like, okay,
I think it's in this regression. I don't know if it's in this regression or if it's in Chris's like context giving, but at some point he's like, at some point she names herself as the comforter.
Yeah.
You remember that part?
Yep.
Which apparently is a word used in association with the Holy Spirit.
Right. And he relates it to the Trinity of the the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit.
Which I find interesting because like it's almost like it seems weird to me that if the Holy Spirit is supposed to be like the divine feminine, that it somehow got relegated to this like formless Holy Spirit, genderless Holy Spirit, when it's supposed to be the divine feminine, if that is what she represents. Right. So let's say all this is true and Hathor is the comforter, is the Holy Spirit, is the divine aspect of creation. Then for that to not come across in Christianity is an interesting failing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And has led to like repression of women's views, I think. Had just imagine like the history of Christianity playing out differently if it has been known this whole time that like that is
a whole aspect of it, the balancing act of
the
it all.
masculine and the feminine acts or sides of the Trinity of it responsible for creation.
Yeah, and he goes on to clarify the idea that the Son, right? So they got the Father, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and the Son is supposed to be Jesus,
representing but Jesus representing in that Trinity all of humanity, the creation.
Right, which is like the Gnostic view that we're all like
Yeah.
essentially Christ consciousnesses that just haven't woken up and that we can, but it's a process.
But also that and the terminology that he specifically uses is like, well, I don't know if he actually says it, but if humanity is a creation of it, that doesn't mean that we are the only creation, right? So if there's other universes and other dimensions and that also have creation aspects that God is a part of, the Father, right? This you know, back to the secret history, this initial thought that created, if that's the Father and we are the Son, the creation, and the Mother is to guide the Son through existence, or to be the comforter through our existence, and the Father only being there to, you know, in the end times of like being like, once you've gained access to the to the whole of whatever it means, you know, like it's an interesting thought. Is like we are all God, or at least we are all part of the same creation that is sparked from the Father, right?
Yeah.
So in a sense, we are all the same. It's just we are all existing and having our own perspectives on this whole thing. But like,
it just makes me think too, like, dude, what if the Star of Regulus comes and passes, and then boom, like they just all show themselves to everyone, and like,
or just the knowledge shift would be so huge,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
just
Well, it all seems to be
that
building. Like more and more people are catching on.
Yeah.
More and more people are comfortable talking about it.
Open to it.
More like official channels are talking about it publicly, even in the halls of Congress.
Yeah, I mean, as generations go on, you could tell that people are more and more open
if
to
that
this
means
idea.
Something to you.
More and more people are becoming open to this idea that, you know, things about existence and humanity and the universe are more than what they seem to be outside of science and all these things. Like there's more emphasis put on spirituality and these things. Like it just seems, and like what you were saying before is like this feminine, it's not just feminine in the sense of women, right? It's feminine in the sense of the idea
it's
of
nurturing. It's
nurturing to existence and life, right? So like once the planet or the universe or whichever is the overarching, you know, deity of this earth, right, goes into a more nurturing path or pattern or whatever for the next few ages, like it'll change the whole, you know,
it'll
agenda.
change everything. Yeah.
It'll change everything.
I mean, just imagine if we could have a society where we weren't constantly
warring. Yeah.
If we weren't constantly at war with our own governments and against each other for the rulership of everything. If people would just get just chill out and grow up and stop bickering over stupid stuff.
Well, and I think that's another aspect of the importance of the fear, right? So like if you are to gain knowledge of this, if you're to gain knowledge of this esoteric external like level of existence, that's fearful. Like it's fear. Like as humans, we might not just be able to flip a switch and understand it, but it's understanding that is something to fear. And what is not something to fear? Something you know humans, whether they're on this continent, that continent, or this ocean or that ocean. Like,
I mean,
we
humans
understand.
can be dark and
I know,
and evil.
No, I'm just saying. Yeah. But once you switch this understanding of knowledge, where you understand that there's an existence outside of humanity, you start to fear less the other humans across the world, and you start to understand that there's something outside of us. And you start to pull together because you understand that we are not the ones to fear.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a double-bladed.
Well, the whole thing is
like
focused on
sword.
fear in that scenario. Like, it needs to be like turned around and focused on love. Like, those of us who care to get along peacefully and like live in love and support, you know, there are options for setting up societies in ways that, you know, aren't just
fear-based,
like incentivize violence all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why I did the libertarian episode, and that's why I talk about those concepts, because there are legitimate ideas put out there for people. You know, when you're ready to hear those messages, there are ways that we can organize and not just be constantly having
at each other's throats for
having
land.
a fear-based social order. And
yeah, I definitely foresee a world where people can live with their different.
We would thrive into a crazy advanced civilization if we went that direction. And
I think people can still have their own beliefs, and I think there's a place for everybody's beliefs, because I think that they are all a story of our
if you're coming from a place of love, as long as you're not hurting anyone, you can have whatever beliefs you want, man.
Yeah.
Like,
but I do think that these stories
you may not be right all the time, but like, you're not a threat to me for having ideas that I don't agree with. You know?
But I also think like we adapted on different parts of the world with different stories, but I think a lot of these stories can be adapted to understand each other more, instead of like using these stories to fear each other or hate each other across the world, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of these stories are of creation and of our initial like upbringing on Earth itself, but like we're gonna get to a point where we understand that we are all at this point together, and like our stories don't dictate who we are and who we can become. And like if you give into the love and you understand that like humans, like we can all get along and just allow people to have their own views, and you can see that these stories all actually. There's like pieces of all these different stories from around the world that actually can create a better like an understanding of our actual history. If you were to put them together a little bit and stop putting up these walls and like creating these boundaries between the words, you know, just because the words are different doesn't mean that the stories are different.
Right. Right.
And the imagery.
Right, or the message, you know, like the stories and the details can be different, and they are, but like they can't. That doesn't mean they're not completely mutually exclusive always. Mm-hmm. You know, like some people talk about or will argue about, like, oh no, there's heaven and hell, not reincarnation. Reincarnation isn't Christian, and blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, you don't know any of that. Like, it could be both. There could be heaven and hell and a reincarnation.
Yep.
And you could be sitting up there in heaven and get bored one day and be like, I feel like, right. You know, like you don't know how this stuff works.
Or I decided I don't want to be on this plane of existence anymore.
Anytime there's like a contradiction between those things, like a lot of times it could be a different perspective that brings them back together, or it could be different interpretations, or different people who ran those organizations who or changed the messaging in ways that benefited them, like the Council of Nicaea in Christianity, editing and throwing out a bunch of books and choosing translations over the years. And
it could be so real that like if your thoughts of like what's going to happen when you quote unquote die are so strong in one way or another, like that's what's going to happen, right? So like if you believe so strongly that you're
reported a lot, like people who have near-death experiences, it is fairly common. Like there are similar elements, but also it's not uncommon for people to have experiences that like are in accordance with whatever their like religious worldview is,
right? Like you take like Egyptians going through their whole afterlife,
the Sea of Reeds and having their heart measured against a feather. And
then you have some people who are atheists and they believe nothing's going to happen. And guess what? You die and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And you just blip out.
Yeah.
And maybe instead of actually blipping out, all you are is just floating off into nothingness, and there's nothing to grab onto because you haven't allowed yourself to take in any of the to allow yourself to grasp onto anything or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe that becomes reality for you once you die, because
I mean,
maybe there is still some sort of like soul that understands things outside of that.
It could be that it's that literal, but I think it may more be that like in a similar way to like when you fall asleep and you dream. Like you're a part, like your imagination, your experience shapes what's around you, but that doesn't change the fact that there's other things around you also creating their reality. So like it's probably like your own sort of like
version
imagination that's like painting it that way.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that's like the reality of the situation. That's true.
Right. I mean, you can like in those sort of realms, like you're probably not limited and you can create things with your imagination. You can create an afterlife that is that way. And there probably are.
Sure. But
different realms in the spiritual realms that may resemble the different traditions, but
or like if
they're still part of a greater whole.
Like if you're hung up on the fact that you'll be in like a limbo after you die, like there's this like limbo state where like you feel unfinished on Earth, and you want to still stay here, so your soul is like stuck in this limbo state where you're like stuck between the physical and the metaphysical realities, and you're able to like be a ghost in the physical reality where you're able to manifest in certain ways, but in other ways you're just a ghost and nobody sees you and you just don't exist. And
maybe that's because you have unfinished business,
it's a punishment
that you're not willing to go
yourself.
through the light yet.
It's a punishment you put on yourself.
It's not even a punishment as much as like I just need to like
do something.
Watch my son or my daughter, make sure they make it through this pivotal point in life. It could come out of a place of love before you decide to go through the light too. Right?
Yeah. True.
But it could also be like someone who, dies in a state of, fear and trauma and not being able to release it. But
man, I love these topics, and it brings out so much of this. Like
the thing is, the whole message. I give Chris Bledsoe's story a big fat thumbs up. I think it's important. I think everyone who's interested in the topic should like really like check in all the angles of it, and like let that message resonate with you, because it's just a message of love and peace, and and
it's fascinating stuff, man. It's like when you start reading into this and looking into it, you read his book, you watch his interviews.
Yeah,
and you really get a sense of the guy, and you just dive into this whole idea, and then you take in the message that he's trying to tell the world, and like
then you sprinkle in all the extra connections and conspiracy theories and CIA and NASA and freaking Egyptian goddess Hathor. Like, come on, I am all about this one.
I'm hooked.
I love it.
I think we're about done here, huh?
Yeah. So if any of you guys want to point out anything else about this story that we haven't covered,
or you have other stories that are similar,
recommend some other big ones that we can look into.
I did want to give another shout out, and we'll go over this another time, but like the Jeff Cripple episode on Danny Jones, I want to listen to that again, because he has a specific story of another lady that has a similar trauma, and she also she got struck by lightning while she was in the parking lot of her mosque about to attend service, and it sparked this whole thing in her life where she had like premonitions and
what that makes me want
esoteric
to do some
stuff
research
happen.
Yes, let's do that.
That one for sure.
But B, it makes me think of John Newborough, the guy who wrote OWASP. I want to dig into his history and see if he had any sort of like weird, traumatic, near-death type traumas in his past.
Definitely do that before we do the
because that would be interesting to like see if the pattern matches.
Yeah. I know it's for a lot of people, like they definitely have had some trauma when they have had UFO experiences.
It'd be kind of like the Timothy Taylor test. Did we talk about that? I don't think we did.
No, we didn't.
So this Timothy Taylor guy, the other NASA guy who became friends with Bledsoe.
Timothy Taylor, that's the
he's the mission control guy, the
Tyler Durden
of
American
Cosmic. Yeah. Anyway, he had one day he like took the members of the family into a room one at a time.
Yep.
And he would sit them down on a bed and he would hand them a little thing, a little piece of metal. It was like, they said it was like maybe a ½ inch and like kind of thin. And then open the other hand and he'd hand them like another piece of metal, but this was like super thin, like foil. And then they all would like feel this like tingling energy when the two of the metals were in their hands.
Yeah.
And then for Chris, it basically like he like
had like a convulsion.
He was like jolting and like had like a convulsion. He had to like someone had to help him get.
They had to pull it out of his hand to get it out. Yeah, it was like an electrical shock. Like you imagine that.
And it was like a test that this Tim Taylor guy would do on UFO experiencers, and he said all the UFO experiencers who he like gave the most credibility to, like they always had reactions to touching each of the metals like that, but he'd never seen a reaction as like crazy like Chris's. Yeah. But it's an interesting test, and he's like some sort of metamaterial.
That's right. Yeah. How they react
that he couldn't talk about, and like he's got. They some didn't
explain very much.
Yeah,
all he did was like
little cryptographic tidbits in there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's
that could be like a test for experiencers in general, like similar to that test, but like, do they all have that sort of trauma link?
Right. Yeah, the trauma link could be the thing that links them all more firmly, but I
don't necessarily think they all would, because I think there probably is something to the. I think that's what the secret societies and the initiation is meant to duplicate. That if you haven't had that,
right.
And I think that hallucinogens are another path there, and I think that
you can almost
the shamanism practices and meditation are other pathways there. I think there's multiple roads that get there.
Yeah, but it all comes to like the trauma is a part of those things. It seems like like allowing your brain to be traumatized in a sense of like losing its grip on reality. That's traumatizing for a brain, right?
But not all of those are traumatizing. Meditation isn't necessarily traumatizing.
No, yeah, and but I mean, like,
not all shamanic practices are traumatizing, and DMT and like hallucinogens don't have to be traumatizing. They can be.
I guess traumatizing. The word traumatizing has its own connotation.
Right. Like, I just think that's one way to get the pineal to give you that DMT jolt.
It could be a micro trauma too, right? Like where it's not like traumatizing where you're going to like be affected the rest of your life by this one individual event, but it could be traumatizing to a certain center or aspect of your brain that likes to be or have a certain comfort to it.
Okay, yeah.
You know, some sort of micro sort of micro trauma.
Micro trauma. Please don't give these people any new ideas. Micro trauma. Oh my god.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. You can find us on all the different podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google. What's
Spotify.
Their new?
I got us on. We're on Audible now.
Oh yeah, cool.
We're on Pandora,
Overcast, YouTube, Rumble.
Yep.
You can find us on Facebook or Instagram. We do our posts every Tuesday morning to let everybody
easy
know.
ways to reach out and communicate to us. But you can also go to our website, dualitycheck.net. And there you'll find all of our episodes, all of our links, all of our videos, everything we talk about. If you click episodes and you click the episode you want, everything's right there. In this, in the episode page for today's website, or for today's episode, I'm going to have everything Christopher Bledsoe. I'm just going to link it all there.
Yep.
So if you want to just take in as much Chris Bledsoe stuff as you can, go to our website for this or check the show notes, and I'll have all the links for tons of different stuff to take in.
Oh yeah, and if you didn't listen to part 1 already and it's the end of episode part 2, well, go back to part 1. Thanks for listening. Love you guys.
Adios.